Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, teacher, to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, to the compassionate lineage masters. The unsurpassed, profound Dharma is rarely encountered in 100,000 eons. May I now see, hear, receive, and understand the Tathagata's genuine meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please let us give rise to the Supreme Bodhicitta. Next, we will thoroughly discuss the profound Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch, commencing with its very first and foundational chapter. In the very first chapter, it vividly describes precisely how the revered Huining profoundly inspired and completely transformed Daoming, who is also widely known as Huiming. This particular point should be thoroughly discussed in approximately the 13th question, which comprehensively covers this entire section. Earlier, we discussed in detail how the revered Sixth Patriarch was carefully hiding himself within the mountain. Later, a determined group of people came after him, intending to forcefully seize back the precious robe and the sacred bowl. Among the many individuals present, there was a notable figure named Huiming, who was known for being physically quite strong and possessing a robust constitution. Of all the people gathered, he was the one who eagerly came forward and took the initiative to search for him, demonstrating his determination and resolve. During the course of this diligent search, the profound Dharma was ultimately transmitted to him. The robe and bowl were placed on a rock, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move them. In the end, he had no choice but to seek the Dharma. He was not there to seize the robe and bowl, but to seek the teachings. Afterwards, he attained the Dharma, and in fact, the key to obtaining the Dharma was quite simple. The Sixth Patriarch explained it to him repeatedly. Actually, what I am giving you is a state described in words. The deepest and most wondrous key, the true state, is right by your own side. From this fundamental principle, we can also clearly see. In fact, Chan Buddhism can be said to not rely on written words. In our unsurpassed secret teachings, there is a specific tantra called the Tantra of No Words. Some people who are particularly attached to conceptual distinctions might ask, regarding the Tantra of No Words, isn't this still made up of words? Isn't the Tantra itself composed of words? But that's not really what it means. Some of the principles and states described within it, the words are merely a temporary means of expression. In reality, the true content within it, not to mention the highest states in Vajrayana and Chan Buddhism, even the ordinary words we use in the world are just substitutes. Written language, in fact, only serves as a representative. It cannot. Therefore, between the teachings and realization, realization is the fundamental one. Many people think that if there are piles of scriptures or the Tripitaka somewhere, oh, there is Buddha Dharma here. Of course, there are some books of teachings here, but in reality, the content within these books, let's see how many of us truly possess such a state of realization in our own mind streams. This state is the genuine realization. When we talk about turning the Dharma wheel, wheel means a continuously revolving circle. That is to say, the wisdom and great compassion present in the mind streams of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. If these concepts can continuously and perpetually revolve within the intricate mind streams of other sentient beings, for example, all the realizations within his mind stream, if they can be poured into my mind stream like a full bottle being emptied, even if not completely poured out, but only partially, for instance, a teacher may possess many levels of realization, and so-called lineage disciples may receive a portion of that great compassion or wisdom. This too is an effect of turning the Dharma wheel. Therefore, as Dharma transmitters, we should strive to ensure that the Dharma present in our own mind streams, do our best to transmit them to suitable vessels. This is extremely important. If in your own mind stream you truly have nothing, if it is empty, then take what is in the books, filter it through your own mind stream, and then pass it on to others. Sometimes I do this myself. If I don't have it in my own mind stream and I need to give a lecture, first I look at reliable scriptures and the pith instructions of my teachers. Oh, here is a pith instruction. I'll filter it through my own understanding and then pass it on. But when it comes to the pith instructions from the teacher, it's not really about filtering. It's not accurate to call it filtering. On my side, there is a kind of, if I transmit what has come down through my own mind stream, it should be beneficial to others. It's like a blind person holding a lamp. There should be some benefit. So, when it comes to transmitting the Dharma, even though I don't have realization myself, I am still full of confidence. Here, it has already been said that true awakening is actually right by your side. That is, within yourself. This is very important. Next, it continues. Ming said, although Huiming was at Huangmei, I had not truly recognized my own face. Now, having received this instruction, it is like drinking water, only I know whether it is cold or warm. Huiming said this to Master Huining, I, Huiming, your disciple. Some of our Dharma friends often speak like this. Almost 4 disciples are mentioned only in 3 sentences. Disciple such and such. Maybe for some people it's just a habit or something else. For example, among Tibetans, some people also address lamas as Rinpoche. It seems that saying only 2 sentences, there are already 5 or 6 Rinpoches mentioned. In Han regions, there are also people who especially like to do this. Some people say, disciples' karma is heavy, disciples' afflictions are deep, disciples' mind stream is not well tamed, disciple wishes to be punished, disciple wants this or that. Here it also says Huiming the disciple. Although he had already stayed with the 5th Patriarch in Huangmei for a long time, it was indeed the case that before today, before you directly pointed out the nature of mind, in reality he had not recognized the true face of his own inherent mind. Today, through your instruction, using very simple language, as mentioned earlier, not thinking of good, not thinking of evil at just this moment, this is your original face. The Master explained it to him in an especially simple way. You should not dwell on thoughts of evil, nor should you dwell on thoughts of good. It is right in this very moment, in between. In our Vajrayana teachings, we do not recall the past, nor do we speculate about the future, and we also do not follow after the present moment. At this very time, the mind's inherent state of radiant clarity, its luminous and pure essence, this is your original face. That is why, in Vajrayana, we often speak of recognizing the original face. To recognize the original face is simply a short form for recognizing your true nature. Therefore, generally speaking, disciples with the right and proper karmic connection, by truly and sincerely applying this simple yet profound pith instruction, this straightforward and direct method, can immediately recognize their own mind. When they recognize their mind, they realize that the reason they have been wandering in samsara since beginningless time is simply because they have not recognized their true mind. If one truly recognizes the true mind and continues to maintain and practice it, then at a certain point it becomes like a thief entering an empty house, neither beneficial nor harmful. Any kind of discriminating thought becomes neither beneficial nor harmful to them. If one continues to practice in this way, it is just as described in Dzogchen, in a field of gold, ordinary stones and earth cannot be found. Ultimately, everything is in a state of complete purity. In fact, some of the teachings in Chan Buddhism and some in Vajrayana can correspond to and complement each other in understanding. In this respect, they are indeed effective. So at that time he said, through your especially simple pith instruction that directly points to the mind, I have now attained enlightenment. What is the state of enlightenment like? It is indescribable, truly beyond words. In other words, as a person drinks water, only they know whether it is warm or cold. If someone drinks water, only they themselves know whether it is hot or cold. From the outside, there is really nothing to be seen, but during the process of drinking, the person themselves is very clear about it. Using language to describe it, at most you can say it is cold, hot, or scalding. Aside from that, you really can't grasp its true depth. If you try to fully explain it with words, it's impossible. So when you truly have realization, when you reach such a state, at most, you might say, it is clear and pure, it is emptiness, it is the inseparability of clarity and emptiness, it is bright and lucid, distinctly apparent, and so on. You can only describe it in such general terms, but these general words, can they really convey the most inconceivable, utterly ineffable realization you have in your heart? The state where the wisdom of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is no different from one's own mind is extremely difficult to express. That is why Master Huiming was especially grateful to the 6th Patriarch. Why is that? Because through his Dharma, he completely understood the true nature of all phenomena. In other words, he recognized the original face of his own mind. So, since ancient times, there have been many lineage disciples who, through his teachings, were able to recognize the original face of their own minds. He was extremely grateful, deeply appreciative. Some people, although they have not truly recognized the original face of the mind, when it comes to making choices in their lives and determining the direction of their lives, and when they gain insight into major matters, they are also especially grateful. Therefore, some great masters of the past often said, whether or not you have met this teacher in person, if you rely on this teacher's teachings, both the visible and invisible guidance, if it allows you to truly understand the most profound principles, such a teacher can be called your root guru. There is also this kind of saying, so here he was especially grateful, and later he was also particularly grateful to Master Huineng. Today, the esteemed Master Yu are Huiming's teacher. Huineng then thoughtfully responded, If that is truly the case, then it is clear that you and I both share the very same revered teacher in Huang Mei. Please take exceptionally good care of yourself and your spiritual journey. He said that today, the esteemed practitioner, Huiming, with profound reverence, truly regards you as my authentic root guru. It is important to note that within the rich and ancient tapestry of the Chinese spiritual tradition, the specific concept of a root guru, as it is understood in some other traditions, may not always be explicitly or directly present in the same formalized manner. However, for me personally, my revered master, who is also my true and rightful abbot, has been, from that pivotal moment onward, the central figure in my spiritual journey and guidance. Because with your guidance, I have already recognized the true nature of my mind. So from now on, once a teacher, forever a father, never be separated from the guru, lifetime after lifetime, never apart from the teacher. He began to recite this profound and significant teaching. How did the wise and insightful Huineng respond to this recitation? He thoughtfully said, if you were to articulate it in precisely that manner, then both you and I would be considered direct and devoted disciples of the esteemed Fifth Patriarch. Therefore, he chose not to utter those words himself, because after all, at that particular moment, he was still merely a layperson, not yet formally ordained or recognized within the monastic order. Huiming had been a devoted monk there for many, many years and was widely regarded as a rather well-known and respected teacher. He said, although with my guidance I awakened you and you have attained enlightenment, it wouldn't be quite appropriate or indeed truly fitting for me to be your sole and ultimate guru in terms of certain specific rules or particular guidelines. So in response, he thoughtfully said, both your esteemed teacher and my own revered teacher is in fact the Fifth Patriarch. The Fifth Patriarch of Huang Mei is our shared teacher, and that is sufficient. But since I have pointed the way for you this time and you have already awakened in the future, you should take good care to protect and maintain your realization. As we mentioned earlier, the first hope is that you diligently protect and maintain your realization. The second is the same. He doesn't explicitly say it here, but just as his teacher told him, he should also strive to liberate all sentient beings. Third, you should widely propagate the Dharma and not let it die out. In fact, as everyone knows in Chan Buddhism, after attaining enlightenment, one is expected to liberate sentient beings and spread the Dharma. You must also continuously protect and maintain yourself and not let your sense faculties run wild. Otherwise, it is very easy to be tainted by external distractions. Therefore, even though you have already awakened in the days to come, you still need to diligently keep protecting your valuable realization and consistently keep practicing to ensure continued progress. This is an extremely important and profoundly significant matter, which is precisely why such a stringent requirement is made of him. Ming, with a sense of earnest inquiry, then asked, considering the circumstances, where exactly should Huiming proceed from this point forward? Huineng calmly and sagely replied, you should stop your journey where there is Yuan and remain steadfastly where there is Meng. Master Huiming, seeking further clarification, then asked the Venerable Sixth Patriarch, where precisely should I direct my steps and go from now on? Now that I have fully awakened, where exactly should I proceed in the future? The young disciple Huiming earnestly asked. Master Huineng answered him in the same way as his own teacher had taught him. Basically, the words are the same as before. You see, earlier the wise teacher had also responded to him in this very same way, offering guidance and insight. Now, with even greater clarity, he tells him, instructing him that the place he may choose to go in the future is a location that prominently features the distinctive character Yuan. He may certainly stop there and make it his destination. If you happen to come to a place that is distinctly marked with the character Meng, you are indeed permitted to reside there. He, the Sixth Patriarch, did not explicitly say to hide. This is because at that particular time, the Sixth Patriarch possessed the sacred robe and bowl, which made his situation rather dangerous, so he discreetly hid. The venerable teacher told him to hide, so there is a subtle difference here. Since Huiming did not have the significant robe and bowl, no one would try to forcibly take them from him. At that time, the Fifth Patriarch also gave him very good advice. Otherwise, if he were to pass it down again, he would definitely need to hide as well. So he did not require him to hide, but to reside there. Actually, here, the term Yuan specifically refers to Yuanzhu, which is a significant historical place located within the province of Jiangxi. And similarly, Meng specifically refers to Mengshan, which is also a notable geographical location situated in the present-day region of Jiangxi. Later, Huiming was there, first, practicing cultivation, and second, beginning to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. So from this perspective, there is something that we, as later students, should know. First, when Hongren transmitted the Dharma to him, he also gave him some instructions afterwards. He explained to him what to do after attaining realization, giving him clear guidance. Then, after the Sixth Patriarch transmitted the teachings to Huiming in this way, he also gave him final instructions and a clear ultimate goal for his life. This was the same as what his own root guru had told him. So now here, many Buddhists, it's very important for you to know which is your most fundamental lineage. What kind of instructions has your root lineage master given you? You should uphold this kind of conduct. For example, if your master asks you to spread the Dharma and frequently teach the scriptures, then when you have the ability, you should teach the scriptures and expound the Dharma. If you don't have this ability and your master asks you to practice the Dharma diligently, then you should practice his teachings and keep doing so continuously. But what is the situation with many people nowadays? They rely on this one, then that one, and in the end, they have no real foundation themselves. Some people might follow one lineage for 10 or 8 years, then switch to another lineage, and then yet another one. In the end, after changing back and forth, they end up with nothing at all. In ancient times, even ordinary lay people in the world were not like this. When someone got married, they couldn't remarry. There was this saying among worldly people. So if you rely on one teacher but keep switching back and forth, in the end, I'm afraid you yourself won't even know which practice you're actually following or what you're really doing. Which teacher's conduct are you learning from? Every teacher has his own tradition. So this is how I personally see it. Every school has its own path to accomplishment. Therefore, we do not oppose any of the authentic lineages. We fully support all of them. But you need to uphold your teacher's lineage. It's not necessarily exactly the same as others. So for many Dharma friends present here today, I hope that in your own lives you should choose one path. I myself have done the same. After first relying on my root guru, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, I looked at what kind of life he led throughout his entire life. And until the very end, before this life comes to a close, I think basically, of course sometimes perhaps in certain methods or approaches, there will inevitably be some slight changes. But the main principles, regardless of the content of the teachings he transmitted or the way he taught, I try my best to carry on as many of these teachings as possible, doing as much as I can. So the great masters of the past followed their teachers' instructions in this way. But nowadays, many people do not do this. Some even act as mentors, but seem to use a different approach, changing the way of teaching into another method. They think this is a sign of their own accomplishment or a unique trait. For example, when teaching logic or Madhyamaka or any other subjects, they deliberately alter what the teachers pass down, thinking that some of them actually can't even teach properly, to be honest. They didn't listen carefully themselves, so in the end they can't even serve as a mentor. But some, especially those who are a bit clever, do this on purpose. But actually, this doesn't conform to some of the rules set by the great masters of the past. So I hope that in terms of lineage, the actions of many teachers should follow the way the previous masters did things. I've met some Dharma friends who are always running around here and there, and in the end, they don't even know themselves. What to do now, I say, what should you do now? That's for you to decide. Because they themselves don't really have anything going on. All day long, it's just nowadays a significant number of young people are especially pitiful. They truly don't have any clear or defined goals. Ming then prostrated and took his leave, returned to the very foot of the ridge, and said to those pursuing him, I have climbed up these steep heights, but found no trace. We should look for another path. After Huiming received this profound dharma, after truly obtaining the revered master's essential pith instructions, he felt a deep sense of understanding and enlightenment. He prostrated, took his leave, and then began to descend the mountain. Just now, they had just reached the Dayu Ridge, and then he came back from that journey. After successfully returning, he then thoughtfully told those who had been relentlessly chasing after him from behind. He explicitly stated, I have already climbed the steep heights, which unequivocally means I have already successfully ascended. It was a very tall, rocky mountain. Up on that mountain, I went to every place I was supposed to go on the mountain, not missing a single spot. I searched everywhere, but up there, Huining was nowhere to be found. There wasn't even a single trace of him there, so we have no choice but to, because those people behind, he ran quite fast. Maybe they were coming up slowly behind. Maybe he was ahead by a day or two, or maybe just a day. In any case, he had obtained the key instructions and already attained enlightenment. When he was coming back, those people were still slowly searching everywhere behind him. In the past, when we embarked upon a sacred pilgrimage to the revered Mount Ame, one of our fellow practitioners inadvertently took the entirely incorrect and mistaken path up the mountain. When we were coming back from the pilgrimage, he still couldn't find his way. Later, when we finally found him, he was still slowly climbing halfway up the mountain. We made vows and dedicated the merit up above. By the time we had finished reciting the Samantabhadra's aspiration to noble deeds and returned, he was still slowly climbing the mountain. Those people were just down below, observing. At that time, Huiming clearly stated, "I've already checked up there, and indeed there is nothing there at all. It would be best for us to choose another place. And there's nothing here, we should take a different path." So in this situation, even someone who is enlightened, in order to protect the master, for the master's safety, in such cases it is acceptable to tell skillful, expedient lies. He clearly knew where the master was and where he was receiving the Dharma. But in order to protect the master, if those people really came up, it could have caused a lot of trouble. So he sent them away, saying, "There is absolutely no sixth patriarch up there." Everyone present agreed with him. Later, Huiming changed his name to Daoming, avoiding the character Hui from the master's name. All the people who were pursuing from behind believed that what Huiming said was true, because he had already gone ahead and he was in good health and had sharp wisdom. After he went up, since he searched and found nothing, it was certain there was no one there. Everyone truly believed it, and so they all left. Some of them probably got tired after such a long time. Some individuals perhaps may not have brought much in the way of food with them, so they gradually turned back and ultimately gave up. This particular group of people was thus sent away from the expedition. Later, although Huiming's master said, "Hongren is our root teacher," there is no real difference between the two of us. Although you achieved realization through relying on me, as long as we both rely on him, that's enough. But later on, according to the general Chinese tradition, if your own personal name contains characters that are also present in the names of your parents, officials, the emperor, or your respected elders, it is considered a significant sign of disrespect or irreverence toward them. Even within the Buddhist community, if you address a master by their surname, it's not considered very appropriate. Calling him Huiming or Huineng, for example, makes it seem as if you are putting yourself on the same level as your teacher. So later, he changed his name from Huiming to Daoming. This was done to avoid mentioning his teacher's name out of respect. Later on, throughout the course of history, he was frequently and notably referred to in various contexts, including within some profound Chan Buddhist koans, where he was specifically identified as Chan Master Daoming. The preceding discussion was entirely about Huiming, who can now be appropriately called Chan Master Daoming. This is the entire process of his realization. In fact, there are many profound teachings in Chan Buddhist texts. There are also many key instructions on relying on a spiritual teacher, which everyone should understand quite well. Next, we will talk about the entire process of the Sixth Patriarch's journey to the south. Afterwards, Huineng arrived at Caoxi, but was pursued by malicious people, so he took refuge among a group of hunters in Sihui to escape danger. He lived there for 15 years, occasionally teaching the Dharma to the hunters as appropriate. Later, Master Huineng went to Caoxi in the south. Caoxi is now the site of Nanhua Temple, where the Sixth Patriarch's body is kept, and the place where he later spread the Dharma. When he arrived there, some of those who originally wanted to obtain the robe and bowl began to pursue him again. Actually, there aren't many details here. It seems that stories from before, or those told in documentaries, say that at the time, a group of malicious people were constantly searching for him. Later, the Sixth Patriarch kept running, fleeing quickly to the front mountain and deep into the dense forest. They simply couldn't find him. This particular group was especially malicious and malevolent, and they ultimately ended up setting the entire vast forest on fire. While the intense fire raged, the revered Sixth Patriarch was meditating deep inside a rock crevice, nestled securely on a cliff. All the surrounding mountains were ablaze, glowing a fiery red, but he remained completely unharmed. Later, people discovered that this very rock was called the Sixth Patriarch Refuge Stone. There are photos of it from before. You might have seen them. It truly looks as if his entire back, from his shoulders down to his lower spine, was deeply and firmly seated into the very earth itself. The incredibly precise and remarkably clear imprint of his whole body, every curve and contour, is extremely vivid and easily discernible. Even the folds of his robe are distinctly visible in the stone, and they appear distinctly yellowish in color, a hue that is quite striking and noticeable. This visual characteristic bears a remarkable and profound similarity to the revered Guru Rinpoche's sacred body imprint found within the ancient and hallowed temple in Bhutan. It turns out that when the precious Guru went to India, he also visited that place in Bhutan. We traveled a long way from Thimphu, Bhutan to get there. I've forgotten, can't remember the details. That place also has the full imprint of Guru Rinpoche's body. His entire back is pressed firmly and completely into the solid rock, precisely like that. Now, at the revered and historically significant Sixth Patriarch refuge stone, when many individuals choose to meditate peacefully there, a single person's body can fit perfectly and snugly into the natural indentation. So, at that particular time, he was indeed present there, and he successfully overcame all conceivable obstacles and challenges without encountering any hindrance or difficulty whatsoever. Later, he eventually took refuge in a secluded place called Sihui, finding himself among a small group of skilled hunters. Because his teacher had also told him, "I will pass away in 3 years." But since it wasn't convenient for him to spread the Dharma yet, as the conditions weren't ripe, he was told not to teach for the time being. On one hand, he was escaping, seeking refuge. On the other hand, following his teacher's instructions, he stayed there for 15 years. Sometimes he would teach the Dharma to these hunters. Of course, his way of teaching might have been like this. Just like some of our Dharma friends nowadays who are in certain government groups, they teach according to the situation, not daring to speak openly, just sharing a little bit. There's a text called Standards for Being a Good Student and Child, Desigui, and Desigui is very good. It is similar to what's in Buddhism. No, actually it's traditional culture. He guided them using skillful and expedient methods, just like that. It might not necessarily have been for the hunters. If he had truly turned the wheel of Dharma for them, who knows what they would have done. The hunters often made him guard the nets, but whenever he saw living beings, he would release them all. The hunters often asked him to guard the nets because they set them up everywhere and had him watch over them. While he was guarding the nets, every time some wild animals or birds were caught in the nets, he felt sorry for them and would often set them free. Sometimes when the hunters found out, they would often beat him. This happened as well. But every time he would still release the animals. Whenever it was mealtime, he would put vegetables into the pot where meat was being cooked. If someone asked about it, he would reply, "I just eat the vegetables next to the meat." Every time he ate a meal, he wouldn't eat the meat. Instead, he would put wild vegetables into the pot where the meat was being cooked. The pot might not have been easy to clean, but when eating with the hunters, they would eat the meat first, and he would cook and eat the wild vegetables himself. Sometimes, when there weren't even any wild vegetables, others would ask him, "What do you actually eat?" He would reply, "I can eat the vegetables next to the meat." He didn't eat the meat. In the past, Master Huilu said, "Some people say they eat vegetables next to the meat, but I worry they might end up eating meat next to the vegetables." At that particular time, Master Huineng was living amongst the hunters, yet he consistently maintained a strict vegetarian diet throughout his stay. When it comes to being vegetarian and releasing living beings, this is something we all must pay attention to. Actually, in today's world, many Buddhists should focus more on this aspect. I often mention this in different settings. Chinese Buddhism has a particularly good history when it comes to vegetarianism and releasing living beings. At the same time, even now, whether in monasteries or among lay Buddhist communities, it should be said that they are doing very well in this regard. Just like the Sixth Patriarch, who, even among hunters, did his best to maintain a vegetarian diet. Many people I know, including some civil servants and officials, who often have to attend social gatherings, also frequently eat vegetarian meals. If it really isn't possible, they will eat vegetables next to the meat. This kind of situation is quite common. So I sincerely hope that many of us, today should be a day of Thanksgiving. Logically speaking, in the past, many people in Washington, D.C., actually the so-called Thanksgiving also has some negative traditions. For example, they eat turkey. There is this custom. But later, many people with insight started advocating for a movement, suggesting that Thanksgiving should be changed to Vegetarian Day. We should be grateful to all sentient beings. That would be a true Thanksgiving. And November 25th is known as International Vegetarian Day. In the beginning, it was called World No Meat Day. No meat was allowed, and all slaughterhouses were closed. On that day, there could be no bloodshed. Everything had to be shut down. That was the idea of the day. Later, around 1986, a massive movement was launched starting from India. On that day, about 9 million people made a vow to become vegetarian. Since then, Vegetarian Day has been observed in various places around the world. On that day, I was thinking, if one were to make a vow on such a day, although it is not a Buddhist holiday, what truly brings joy to the Buddha is the happiness of all sentient beings. So it can indeed be considered a Buddhist day. I hope that every year on November 25th, we as Buddhists can especially promote this Vegetarian Day. If some people truly find it difficult, just eating vegetarian and releasing animals on that day brings tremendous merit. In fact, eating vegetarian, even if we don't talk about the merits in this life or the next, it is also extremely beneficial for one's own hygiene and health, as well as for environmental protection of the earth today. It is truly very advantageous. In the past, former US President Clinton suffered from severe heart disease. Later, he became vegetarian, and Hillary especially emphasized that he should eat vegetarian. After he started eating vegetarian, he became very healthy. He is a very typical vegetarian. Even now, President Obama's family also insists on eating vegetarian. However, the philosophies and purposes of the two are a bit different. The former mainly does it for health, while the latter does it for protection. Because global warming is now extremely serious, and in order to achieve a low-carbon lifestyle, he has always emphasized that everyone should eat less meat and must maintain a healthy lifestyle. At the same time, this has a significant impact on the overall environmental hygiene and protection of the earth. It plays a major role, and he himself practices this. So sometimes he may not necessarily believe in the great compassion of Buddhism, but as someone who truly cares about society and his own health, there have always been many such people since ancient times. So I sincerely hope that if many of us can truly do the same, we must remember that the meat we consume is, in essence, all the precious lives of sentient beings. Therefore, from this moment forward, we should thoughtfully make a solemn vow. At this time every year, everyone should emphasize and call for many people in the world to refrain from killing and to practice releasing life to engage in such actions. At that time, he had already been among the group of hunters for such a long time, 15 years. In fact, after his realization, if he acted in this way, some Buddhist teachings say this can be considered a very profound ascetic practice. Why is that? When Huiki attained realization, he also went to a brothel. Some people really couldn't understand and said, I discipline my own mind. What does it have to do with you? I discipline my own mind. What business is it of yours? There's no need for you to be concerned about me. At that time, while he was among the group of hunters, on one hand, he was certainly manifesting as if seeking refuge. On the other hand, he was also directly forming a virtuous connection with people in the world who kill. If he stayed there for 15 years, then surely the manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are also different. Perhaps while he was there, he also released a great many living beings. He was quite honest. When collecting the nets, he would release a bird every day. If he released a living being every day, then the merit from that would also be inconceivable. So, the actions of some eminent monks and great masters are indeed very difficult for us ordinary people to fathom. Next, it talks about how he established the Chan tradition, or you could say the school's tradition. One day, he thought to himself, it is time to spread the Dharma. I cannot remain in seclusion forever. So he left and went to Faxing Temple in Guangzhou, where he encountered Dharma Master Yinzong lecturing on the Nirvana Sutra. At times the wind blew and the banner fluttered. One monk said, the wind is moving. Another monk said, the banner is moving. They argued endlessly. Huineng stepped forward and said, it is not the wind that moves, nor the banner that moves. It is your mind that moves, venerable ones. After he had stayed there for 15 years, one day he thought to himself, now the conditions for spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings have matured. I can no longer remain hidden. It is impossible to stay here forever. I cannot remain in hiding indefinitely. I cannot keep hiding here. Now is the time for the conditions to spread the Dharma and benefit beings to be fulfilled. In fact, it is very important for the right conditions to mature before spreading the Dharma and benefiting others. Indeed, some of us go out before the right conditions have matured, while others, even when the conditions are ripe, still do not go out to spread the teachings. Neither of these two approaches is very reasonable. If the conditions have not matured, even if, you see, when he was among the hunters, his master had certainly passed away. About 3 years after his master passed away, logically speaking, he should have gone to see how his master's passing was handled. But he didn't go either. Some of our Dharma friends often say, my master has passed away, I must go and see. Or, my parents have passed away, I must go and see. But the Sixth Patriarch never went to see. He felt there was nothing to see. If the master has passed away, the master has already gone to a pure land. Crying a few times there is of no real use. So sometimes everyone should be mindful of this. Some people are in the middle of reciting a lineage or listening to a profound teaching and then say, our old monk has passed away, I must go back. But even if you go back, there's nothing much you can do, so it's the same situation. When the conditions are ripe, we still need to spread the Dharma. This is also very important. Sometimes when the conditions are truly ripe and perfectly aligned, all sorts of necessary resources naturally and effortlessly come together in a harmonious way. When his conditions matured, he arrived at Faxing Temple in Guangzhou. There he happened to meet the great master Yinzong, who was very famous at the time. In the biographies of eminent monks of the Song dynasty, there are also some stories about him, including stories about when he entered the womb and when he was born. Many neighbors and his parents all had especially auspicious dreams. He had a mature foundation of virtue from a young age. When you have the chance, you should also take a look at what these great masters were like. It might be quite different from many of us. If our own histories were written down, there would probably be more written about our afflictions and suffering. But what were these great masters like from childhood? At that time, the Nirvana Sutra, which the Buddha taught as he approached nirvana, was being expounded. While listening to this sutra, the wind blew through the monastery where there were often large prayer flags set up. When welcoming eminent monks and great masters, people would often carry banners and flags as well. As the vibrant, colorful flags were gently blown by the soft, whispering wind, two devout and learned monks began to earnestly debate with each other, engaging in a profound discussion. One said, "It is the wind that is moving, not the flag. The flag cannot move on its own. It is moved by the wind, so it is the wind that is moving." Another monk said, "Iruwen, it is not the wind that is moving, it is the flag that is moving. The wind itself has no form, so how could it move back and forth?" The two of them were probably debating just like we did that day. One person in particular said, "It should absolutely be the wind that's moving, not anything else." Someone said, "It's not the wind moving." They debated. Neither side gave in. Argument went on. During the course of their debate, Master Huineng heard them and said, "You two, stop. Sometimes when debating, you really need a mediator." Because in this process, especially in some university debates nowadays, like in our Tibetan Buddhist debates, there are winners and losers. But now everything is judged by scores, which can sometimes be very difficult. So at that time, he stepped in and said, "It's not the wind that's moving, nor the banner that's moving, it's your minds that are moving." Of course, this is a very profound teaching from the Zen tradition. All phenomena are only mind. The wind has no true substance, nor does the banner. Everything is created by the mind, so it is the mind that moves. Because everything in the external world arises from the mind. When the mind moves, everything outside moves as well. If the mind does not move, then everything outside remains perfectly still. So everything is a manifestation of the mind, the wondrous power of the mind, a kind of illusion created by the mind, and so on. There are different explanations for this in Vajrayana teachings. Everyone was astonished. All the audience members were especially surprised. Wow, what a great answer. Even though it was just one sentence, when everyone else was arguing endlessly, his single sentence was like pouring water on a fire. In an instant, the whole scene calmed down. At this moment, Yinzong invited him to the seat of honor and questioned him about profound meanings. He saw that Huineng's words were concise and to the point, not relying on elaborate language. Master Zong said, "You must not be an ordinary person. I have long heard that the robe and teachings of Huang Mei have come south. Could you be that practitioner?" Huineng replied, "I wouldn't dare claim so." Later, the truly great and revered Dharma Master Yinzong, who had originally been diligently lecturing on the profound Nirvana Sutra, graciously invited the esteemed Sixth Patriarch Huineng to take the most honorable seat. He then respectfully asked him about many deeply profound and intricate aspects of the Buddha's timeless teachings. Each time he posed a question, because Huineng was an enlightened one, even though he did not rely on written words, his responses were always concise and to the point. Moreover, he consistently used especially simple and straightforward language, and his insightful answers were always precisely spot on. So generally speaking, the language employed by an enlightened person is almost invariably extremely simple and easily understandable. In the past, the precious guru also often said that those who are not enlightened may say a great deal, but never manage to grasp the main point. This applies to giving teachings as well as to writing articles. Sometimes when necessary, of course, the more words the better. But when it's not necessary, if you say too much and ramble on, it's of no use either. That's why, when it comes to enlightened beings, every word in the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch also shows this clearly. It seems that in every sentence you can't find any fault at all, yet the content within is truly worth exploring. So at that time, every sentence he spoke was extremely simple, but the principles were quite profound. Moreover, he didn't rely on written words. Since he was illiterate, there were no written substitutes either. But everything that he articulated and expressed was completely and entirely in accord with the profound and teachings of Buddhism. At this significant point in time, Master Yinzong, with a sense of deep realization, said to the practitioner, "You, this remarkable practitioner, are most definitely not an ordinary individual. A considerable time ago, I distinctly heard that before the fifth patriarch passed away, he passed on his Dharma lineage, that is, the robe and bowl, to a practitioner, saying, 'The Dharma and robe have come south.' There shouldn't be any mistake about this. If I'm not mistaken, whether through various debates or answering questions, perhaps you listened to the Nirvana Sutra for a day or two. I'm not sure about the specifics at that time from all aspects, based on my ability to observe, if I am not mistaken. Are you the practitioner to whom the fifth patriarch passed on the robe and bowl?" On the surface, Huineng said, "I dare not." But in reality, he had already tacitly agreed, meaning yes. So some of our Dharma friends say, "Oh, you are the virtuous teacher, truly remarkable." I dare not, I dare not. But as soon as he says, "I dare not," it actually means yes, yes, yes. Sozong, with a profound sense of reverence and deep respect, made a solemn bow and humbly requested that the sacred robe and the venerable bowl, significant symbols of spiritual authority, be carefully brought out and prominently shown to the entire assembled congregation. Following this, the esteemed Master Yinzong then formally requested the presence of the highly revered Master Huineng. "It would be best if you could temporarily show your robe and bowl to everyone." He was also very clever. It's not that he said, "You must be the patriarch, so everyone should immediately come and take refuge." He didn't do that. He was very cautious. He thought, "It must be you, but just to be sure, it would be best, if possible, to let everyone see your robe and bowl to receive some blessings." On one hand, he might have had a bit of doubt, wondering if it was really true. There was that possibility too. After asking this, in this part of the story, nothing further happened here. But at that time, Master Huineng did show his robe and bowl to everyone and gave his blessings. No one had any doubts. It was indeed the fifth patriarch who had transmitted the Dharma to him. Zong asked again, "The transmission from Huang Mei, how was it instructed?" Huineng replied, "There was no specific instruction. It was only about seeing one's true nature, not about meditation or liberation." Master Yinzong asked him, "Since you have already received the robe and bowl," at that time, Master Hongren of Huang Mei, the fifth patriarch, "what were the main instructions or key points he entrusted to you? Were there any admonitions, directions, or teachings, anything besides the robe and bowl? Did he teach you any profound Dharma at that time?" Master Huineng said, "There actually weren't any particular teachings. He only kept talking to me about seeing one's true nature, the method of realizing the mind and seeing one's nature in Chan Buddhism. He didn't talk about meditation, nor did he mention attaining liberation through practicing virtuous deeds. In fact, at that time, he only spoke about the Diamond Sutra. Aside from that, he didn't teach anything else. That's why many sudden enlightenment practitioners in Chan Buddhism today do not particularly emphasize other forms of Dharma teaching or expounding the scriptures. They simply keep practicing contemplation and Chan meditation. This is also part of their tradition." The patriarch asked, "Why not discuss meditation and liberation?" He replied, "Because these are two separate methods, not the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha Dharma is the teaching of non-duality." Master Yinzong asked, "Then why is it that at that time the fifth patriarch did not teach you the methods of meditation or liberation?" "Why didn't he teach them?" He replied, "Because practicing or teaching meditation and liberation, all methods with characteristics are dualistic. There is the one who grasps and the object to be grasped, or the duality of self and others. They are not the ultimate true Buddha Dharma. In fact, the Buddha Dharma is the gate of non-duality." Zong asked again, "What is the non-dual Dharma of Buddhism?" Now here comes the question. You said all these are dualistic teachings, so what is the true gateway to non-duality? Huineng replied, "Dharma Master, you lecture on the Nirvana Sutra and clarify that Buddha nature is the non-dual Dharma of Buddhism. For example, the Bodhisattva king of sublime virtue said to the Buddha, if someone commits the 4 grave offenses, commits the 5 heinous crimes, or is an Achantika, will their roots of goodness and Buddha nature be severed or not? At that time, he used the teachings the Dharma Master had mentioned to answer him. Actually, Huineng probably hadn't finished listening to the Nirvana Sutra at that time. Now remember, there seems to be more later on. At that time, he was with another person, a bhikshuni named Wu Jinzang. He was illiterate, so he asked her to read the Nirvana Sutra to him, and he fully understood many of its principles. You can see this for yourselves later on. At that time, he also knew that there was such a teaching in the Nirvana Sutra. In the Nirvana Sutra, it is stated that realizing Buddha nature is the non-dual Dharma gate. At that time, the Bodhisattva king of sublime virtue said to the Buddha, "Those who have committed the 4 major offenses of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying, as well as the 5 heinous crimes such as killing one's father or mother, and also the Echantika who have severed all roots of goodness." Echantikas are those who completely lack any roots of goodness. All those who develop extremely severe wrong views, this is mentioned in some Theravada scriptures as well, are these people cut off from Buddha nature? At that time, the Bodhisattva asked the Buddha this question. The Buddha said, there are 2 kinds of roots of goodness. One is permanent, the other is impermanent. Buddha nature is neither impermanent nor permanent, therefore it is not cut off. This is called non-duality. The Buddha replied to him, so-called roots of goodness. One kind is permanent, the other is impermanent. But Buddha nature is beyond both permanence and impermanence, so it is never cut off. Even for an Echantika, it is not cut off. In the true nature of Tathagatagarbha, it is the great permanence. In the face of this great permanence, even similar notions of permanence and impermanence have already been transcended. Actually, this is being explained from the definitive meaning perspective. In the ornament of the sutras, it is said that the so-called Echantika of the present time, temporarily they have no opportunity to attain Buddhahood. It just takes a much longer time, that's all. In fact, ultimately, there is still liberation. This view also exists. So, from the perspective of the ultimate reality, the Tathagatagarbha will not fall into the extreme of annihilation, and thus it is called non-dual. One is wholesome, the other is unwholesome. Buddha nature is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. This is called non-duality. Aggregates and elements, ordinary people see them as 2, but the wise realize their nature is non-dual. This non-dual nature is precisely Buddha nature. Then it says one is wholesome and another is called unwholesome. But Buddha nature is neither wholesome nor unwholesome, so it is called non-dual. There are also the 5 aggregates, the 18 elements, the 12 sense bases, and so on. In the eyes of ordinary people, these are seen as the 5 aggregates, not the 18 elements, and so on. Each is regarded as 2 separate dharmas. But for those who truly realize emptiness, the wise ones, there is none of the aforementioned, no wholesome or unwholesome, no 5 aggregates, 18 elements, and so on. Therefore, the non-dual nature is precisely Buddha nature, and thus it is never cut off. At that time, Huineng cited scriptural evidence from the Nirvana Sutra in front of Master Yinzong, because the Nirvana Sutra was his specialty and he was currently teaching it. If he had used another scripture to explain it to him, it wouldn't have worked. This was the best choice. That's why he cited this particular scriptural evidence at the time. Upon hearing this, Yinzong was delighted, put his palms together and said, "My own expounding of the sutras is like rubble, but your discussion of the Dharma is like pure gold." At that moment, Master Yinzong was extremely delighted upon hearing this. He put his palms together, but did not bow in full prostration. Because Huineng was a lay practitioner, he did not prostrate, but simply put his palms together in respect. Certain person refers to myself. Although I am here expounding the sutras and teaching the Nirvana Sutra to many people, it is like earth, stones, and rubble, lacking true value. Like chaff and husks, it has no real meaning. But your teaching is like pure gold, able to address the most crucial and difficult issues. In fact, when some people truly attain realization, they can resolve certain questions very easily, sometimes with just a single sentence. If one has not truly understood, whether asking questions or otherwise, the other day I met a Dharma teacher. He said that in our institute there are a few Dharma teachers who often go to other temples to give talks and raise questions. He said that this person must have some confidence. If he didn't, he definitely wouldn't dare to go. I said that's true as well. If he himself has a bit of insight and is somewhat well-read and knowledgeable in this area, then he should have some confidence in himself. So he shaved Huineng's head and wished to serve him as his teacher. Huineng then, under the Bodhi tree, opened the Dharma gate of Dongshan. At that moment, Master Yinzong was especially pleased. However, if Huineng was to become a patriarch, he was still a layperson at that time. So he shaved his head in front of Master Yinzong, taking on the appearance of a monk. Later, some historical accounts say that he received ordination from the Vinaya master Zhiguang. He became known in history as Master Huineng, a monk. Although he was ordained in front of him, Master Yinzong still acknowledged him as his teacher. We can also understand it this way. He was tonsured in front of him because he explained many profound teachings of the Nirvana Sutra to him. You could say they were teachers to each other. One was his tonsure master, and the other passed on many teachings to him, resolving various doubts. A teacher in that sense. Huineng was under the Bodhi tree. Wasn't there originally a Tripitaka master Jiyue who prophesied that 170 years later, a great virtuous one, a flesh-body bodhisattva, would become a monk here? He became a monk under this Bodhi tree and then established the Dongshan Dharma Gate. Later, he often mentioned that the true birthplace of the Sudden School was there. In fact, at that time, Master Yinzong was still very respectful toward him. Originally, he was the greatest teacher in the Lingnan region at that time. If he hadn't shown such respect and hadn't promoted his virtues, if he had even a little jealousy, the Sixth Patriarch might have had to wait even longer. It would have taken some time for his true career to unfold. But the reason he was so respectful at that time was that all the conditions for his Dharma propagation and benefiting sentient beings matured at once. The above describes the entire process of his practice and asceticism. Huineng obtained the Dharma at Dongshan, endured great hardships, and his life hung by a thread. But today he is able to gather here with officials, monks and nuns and lay people. Could this not be the result of karmic connections accumulated over countless lifetimes, as well as offerings made to the Buddhas in past lives, and the cultivation of similar wholesome roots, that one is now able to hear and receive the sudden teaching and attain the Dharma as described above? He said that when Huineng obtained the Dharma at Dongshan, he endured countless hardships in the process. There were many times when his own life was nearly lost. It was extremely dangerous. Today, together with over 1,000 people at Dafan Monastery at that time, officials, monks and nuns, lay people, over 1,000 people in total, were all present to whom he expounded the Dharma together. He said that such an opportunity to teach the Dharma is not a matter of mere chance. It may appear to be accidental, but in reality it is inevitable. It must be the result of countless lives and kalpas. If it were not for the wholesome karmic conditions accumulated over many lifetimes, if one had not made offerings before the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the past and planted vast wholesome roots, if this were not the case, then it would be impossible for us to listen to and receive such a sudden teaching together today. Therefore, for all of us present here today, whether you are online or physically present in the audience, even though I myself do not possess even 1/10,000th of the merit of those great masters of the past, we are still studying together in this way, as mentioned in many stories before, and also when we discussed the way of the Bodhisattva. Without the collective accumulation of such wholesome roots in our past lives, without having collectively made offerings and accumulated such wholesome roots before the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so on, it would be extremely difficult for us to have the conditions to study together in one place. Indeed, sometimes what we call causes and conditions are truly subtle and intricate. In fact, I wanted to teach the Platform Sutra even 10 years ago, but perhaps at that time various causes and conditions were not yet ripe. There were also very few people back then, and perhaps in other aspects as well. Now we all share this fortunate connection together. There was once a person who wanted to spread the Dharma, but could never find any followers. Later, he asked his teacher what he should do. The teacher said, "If you really can't find anyone, then make a vow to let many mosquitoes come and bite your body." After that, many mosquitoes did come and bite him. He then made a vow, wishing that these would become his followers in the future. Later, in his old age, many young people came to listen to his teachings on the Dharma. There is such a story. So, as for the teachings of the Sixth Patriarch, we all share in them together. It's also possible that in the past we were disciples of this Dharma gate. If we study together, it's very likely that we once made such a vow together. So everyone should feel joyful about this. The teachings were passed down by the ancient sages, not created by Huineng himself. Those who wish to hear the teachings of the ancient sages should each purify their minds. After hearing them, each should dispel their doubts, and then there will be no difference from the sages of the past. The Sixth Patriarch said that it is a very auspicious connection to transmit these teachings to the relevant people today. If it weren't for the karmic connections from previous lives, we wouldn't share such a connection now. The Buddhism I transmit is actually the teachings of the great virtuous ones and sages of the past. Their transmitted wisdom is not my own, not Huineng's personal wisdom. This is indeed very true. No matter which Dharma teacher it is, the Dharma they transmit should be passed down in an unbroken lineage from Shakyamuni Buddha to the present-day lineage masters. Just as I mentioned earlier, this is a continuous stream of wisdom passed down without interruption. This wisdom is not something invented by one or two people on their own. It is not fabricated by one's own conceptual thinking. It is not like that. No one has that ability. For some worldly knowledge, one can simply read books and understand it themselves. But when it comes to the Dharma, whether exoteric or esoteric, if a teacher lacks a lineage transmission and tries to fully understand its principles relying solely on their own ability, I think, except for a very few individuals with exceptionally sharp faculties, it is quite difficult. Therefore, all of this Dharma is the wisdom of the predecessors. I have already transmitted this wisdom to you. After receiving the transmission, now it is up to you to purify your own mind. Liberation depends on oneself. I have already told you the method of liberation. Now liberation depends on yourself. After listening from now on, each of you should continuously engage in practice. After practicing, you need to dispel your own doubts and purify your mind. If you continue in this way without interruption, then your mental continuum will become indistinguishable from that of the accomplished sages of the past. This is indeed the case. A teacher may transmit the Dharma once, and after that transmission, a disciple who truly possesses the qualities of the Dharma will keep familiarizing themselves with it continuously. Once they have obtained it, they keep applying it without ceasing. Eventually, all the afflictions in their own mind stream are eliminated, and their continuum becomes no different from that of the sages. Some people who lack diligence just receive it and that's it, they don't care. It's like when we were in school, no matter how earnestly the teacher tried to teach you, in the end the knowledge remained with the teacher and I never truly acquired it myself. On the contrary, I even committed offenses and engaged in all sorts of negative actions. This kind of situation does happen. So any spiritual teacher who has already transmitted the wisdom of the predecessors, some people treat this wisdom as something as precious as a wish-fulfilling jewel. When they obtain a book or a single line of teaching in their hearts, they think, after all my hardships traveling to Tibet, to India or wherever, I have finally received this Dharma. After obtaining this Dharma, they cherish it deeply from then on. In this way, it truly benefits both oneself and others. Therefore, we should understand why it is said that Dharma teachers possess tremendous merit. The Sutra of Golden Light also discusses this. There are 5 kinds of merit in giving the Dharma, whereas giving material things does not have as much merit. First, giving the Dharma benefits both oneself and others, but giving material things does not have such great merit. Giving the Dharma can lead one out of the 3 realms, while giving material things cannot even help one transcend the desire realm. Giving the Dharma can lead to attaining the pure Dharma body. Material giving only brings a very small and quite limited benefit to the physical body, and its effects are often temporary. Giving the Dharma brings boundless and inexhaustible merit, whereas the merit of material giving is ultimately limited and will be exhausted. Giving the Dharma can completely eradicate ignorance, but material giving cannot. That is why we say that transmitting the Dharma is so important. It is very necessary for everyone to have the wisdom of the sages continue in their own mind streams. When we possess such wisdom, we will definitely pass it on whenever the right conditions are present. If the conditions really aren't sufficient, find mosquitoes, make aspirations for them, and then make offerings. In the next life or later in life, gather them and transmit these teachings to them. Everyone who heard the Dharma joyfully paid their respects and withdrew. This is just like what is described in the Buddhist sutras. Over 1,000 people heard the entire Dharma teaching from the Sixth Patriarch. This is called the chapter on conduct and circumstances. After he finished recounting his entire journey in seeking the Dharma and his life story, everyone was extremely joyful and finally paid homage to the Sixth Patriarch before departing. In the past, it seemed that many followers would first pay homage to the Master, and after listening to the teachings, they would pay their respects and withdraw. This is a tradition in Buddhism. This should be the end of the first chapter, right? I don't have the following parts, so I think it's finished. The very first chapter is now finished. Thank you all.
Bandharangara Badma Sodargye Bandharangara Badma Sodargye Bandharangara Badma Sodargye